Welcome. We're looking at Noah's Ark. It's a very powerful story, and I have memories of playing with these when I was a child, and our own children played with these as well. Maybe that's your experience. And I had a Noah's Ark, a wooden one, not better than this one, couldn't find a photo of the one I had, and loved playing with that, making the animals come in and out and setting up setting up playthings. But it's not just a children's story, although there were beautiful elements. And I know our Sunday school lesson will focus on the rainbow and the importance of that, and so will we. But we have to get there first. The first non-children's thing that we don't hear about in Sunday school is the precipitating event. The precipitating event that gets the flood happening. The sons of God saw the daughters of humans were beautiful and they married any of them they chose. So you've got sin somehow moving out of the Garden of Eden, Cain and Abel, brothers fighting against brothers, evil moving through human communities, and now it's actually moving up into the heavenly realm. So the sons of God, whoever they are, some angelic or heavenly beings, coming down and mingling with the daughters of humans to make the first giants. And Goliath would have been one of those descendants. And God says, this isn't good. I'm going to limit the life of humans. It's like another fall event. So what have we got? We've got a pattern here in this whole Noah's Ark story. So there's a cosmic mess. Realms are being crossed. The sons of God marrying earthly women. And some of the Bible translations just leave the Hebrew word there, Nephilim, giants. Later, of course, God's Son will come down to us here on earth in a good way, a way to bring us life and to reverse the effects of sin. But that's another event. So we have God seeing wickedness, seeing the evil in human hearts, and God grieves. God carries the pain of this messed up creation. It's not just Eve carrying the pain of childbirth or Adam carrying the pain of trying to make a living out of the ground. It's God also carrying pain and hurt. And God sees that the earth is filled with violence. We had Cain killing Abel. Later in that chapter, there's Lamech. So remember, God protects Cain with a mark and says, I'm going to protect you sevenfold. Lamech gets in a fight with a younger man, just a fight, and he kills him, and he's very proud of that. Yeah, Cain's protected sevenfold, I'm protecting myself 77-fold. Violence is just multiplying. And God decides, this is not what I wanted for my creation, and he decides to end all flesh, all human and animal life. Except Noah finds favor, and he's told to build an ark, and God makes a covenant with Noah. So the story continues. Noah enters the ark with all the animals. There's a 7-day wait for rain. And you're going to see that all these things are reflected in the opposite as we come out of the flood. Then there's 40 days of rain. So the waters that were pushed up into the sky are released. The waters that were down underneath the earth and in the plugged up in the deeps of the ocean, those waters are released. So waters rise. And these waters rise for 150 days. All of the earth, maybe just think of Middle East, the Tigris, Euphrates, all that flat country is totally covered over the hills and over the mountains. The middle point of our pattern is that God remembers. God remembers Noah and the animals. And now we come out of that in the reverse. So there's 150 days while the waters recede. There's 40 days while the land dries out. There's a 7-day wait for the dove to return finally with the olive branch. Actually, there's a number of little 7-day events there with the birds. And then they leave the ark. We're just going to pause with our pattern there. We're asking, how does God deal with the constant violence and sin with humans. God grieves. And here we see him reversing the steps of creation in Genesis chapter 1. The earth comes out of water, now it just gets back, totally submerged. And the land and the animals also pay the cost of sin. But floating on the water is Noah's Ark. This is the restart button. It's been pressed. Last week you saw God didn't abandon Cain, but when Cain called out for help, God marked him and protected him. And so we also ask, where's the grace in this text? It's going to come out very clearly in the rainbow at the end. But before we get there, let's take a little diversion. The experience of Noah and his family is also our own experience. We listen to God, and there are times when we very bravely and clearly act on what we've heard. Our gospel lesson today talked about showing love to enemies. We do that. We don't take revenge. We learn to deal with our bitterness. I'm going to come back to the times of flooding. What keeps us afloat in difficult or dangerous times? We've all experienced that. Who are the people who have helped us to stay afloat? Who are the people we could trust in? Who are the people who sheltered us? And we also provide shelter for others at critical times. Sometimes we're not even aware how vital and how important the things we've done for others are. What about waiting? All that long time, over a year, 2 lots of 150 days, 40 days, 7 days, hoping and trusting that things will work out and there will be a fresh start. Sometimes we have to be quite determined and focused and do things differently for ourselves, but other times we have to simply wait and trust and hope that things will resolve in us and around us, that God will make the changes. Let's go back to flooding. I've learned in conversations with my wife, she talks about flooding within people. She said men tend to flood a bit quicker or flood differently to women, but it's like the emotion builds up and we can't think anymore. And we need to stop, we need to breathe, we need to take time out, we need to get out until we're ready to re-engage. And we see that in children, we see that in teens, we see that in ourselves maybe in times of great distress, flooding. Now the problem is, if you've got one person who's flooding and the other person's wanting to sort things out, this person's flooding, they can't talk or process, but the other person's needing and wanting, and you can see how things go wrong. What's very helpful in this time of flooding is to understand and to make that commitment, I need to step away, but I will come back. When I've calmed down, we'll try and work through and sort this out. Let's go back to our account. So this is a pattern we had, and we're going to continue that pattern. And you'll find there's opposites for all these things as well. So Noah leaves the ark with all the animals, he builds an altar, and God responds with favor. And as God smells the offering going up, God decides, God makes a vital decision, life will continue. And instead of violence filling the earth, the instructions to Noah and the animals and Noah's family fill the earth. The blessing that was originally given in Genesis chapter 1 is continued. It's not withdrawn as it was briefly during the flood. And God puts a rainbow in the skies, and God makes a covenant. The initial covenant was just with Noah and his family and those animals. Now it's a covenant for all of life. God is not going to deal with sin by blotting everything out. And unfortunately, there's another family mess and boundaries are crossed within Noah's family, and there are serious repercussions, but God does not withdraw his blessing or take away life. The fascinating thing about this text is that in the God's seeing that God changes, we all count. deeply in God's heart, in God's economy. Before, God was seeing evil, and he saw Noah. Now he sees the rainbow, and he is totally committed to life. And God commits to dealing with evil and human sin in a different way. The Son of God comes down from heaven to be one of us. He carries and he knows the pain, and he commits to non-violence. He commits to non-revenge. And we, as God's people, are also on that path and called that way. We do sin, we get things wrong, but we have forgiveness and we have God's Holy Spirit working in us.